My name is Emil Harmsen. I am a full-time instructor at Milwaukee Area Technical College in computer simulation and game development. And I'm a graduate of that school. I graduated there in 2004. I was one of the first students through the 3D animation program that was offered there. I got a degree in interactive media, associate's degree in interactive media out of there. And then I went down to Chicago to see if I could find my way into the game development industry, and hit brick wall after brick wall. So I decided to create my own company. I created my own company, Forever Interactive, back in 2006. I had a crazy idea to build out a MMORPG completely in the cloud. Boy, was I nuts, and everybody told me I was. But then I was able to build it out and get on the showroom floor at GDC of 2008. Yeah, 2008. Economy crashed, then I re-rolled and did another MMO, which got me on the showroom floor again of GDC with a different MMO, and with the Hero Engine, with Visions of Zosmos, which we'll be showing out there today. And then I moved back to Wisconsin, and built another company called EverFire, and which I got through my first seed accelerator program, which I was able to build console games. We started out on mobile, we left mobile, and then we went over to console. And right now, I'm running the seed accelerator this summer. First one in Milwaukee, where I'm getting $100,000 to hand out to 5 lucky teams to build a game and a company. So that's me in a nutshell. And I've been doing this for a while. I learned Agile game development pretty much. I sent my brother down to Chicago to get trained because we heard about it and how cool it was. And he got trained, came back to the company and started training us. And then I went and got myself certified as well in Scrum. And now I'm an Agile coach, and I teach it to all my students. One of the great things about being able to teach it is that every semester I get to start over with a new team, and you start to see inherent flaws in teams that start out with just getting together and trying to come up with a design idea and then build it. And I get to see some of the ways in which you can fix it. I can see epic fails, I can see epic wins. So it allows me to basically use my students as guinea pigs in solving issues and problems and coaching teams and that kind of stuff. So I got a lot of first-hand knowledge with this subject matter. How many of you guys use Agile or attempting to use Agile? Okay. How many use any project management system? Are you using Waterfall? No? Any other? Yeah? Or just putting stuff on a board and taking one off the board and doing it, or telling somebody to do something? Well, when it's done right, I mean, this Agile requires very little ceremony. Pretty much the easiest part of it is just putting a task on a wall and then somebody taking it and starting to work on it. So it's just, you do this naturally in life. You basically, when you get up in the morning, you prioritize. I get up and I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'm going to take a shower, brush my teeth. You know, what are some of the big ticket items on the day? Well, you prioritize those throughout your day. You break those up into tasks, and you do those tasks that lead to you completing your projects for the day. And that's normal everyday life. That's why Agile works so well, is because it is inherent in human beings to have this type of system. The more that you get into it, and the more levels of ceremony that you add into this, the more you can track, the more metrics that are used. So it's not laissez-faire. There are a lot of good tools within Agile that can benefit high-performing teams and businesses that actually have to have metrics to get funding. So I thought I'd make it a little fun, a little old school. I would give a little Voltron reference. And for those of you that don't know Voltron, just think of Power Rangers. It's pretty much the same thing. And basically it comes down from what I've seen on teams that are starting out. There's 5 keys. And of those 5 keys, communication is the #1 thing. And that's inherent in the Agile Manifesto. And if you adhere to all things communication, and everybody knows exactly what everybody's working on, or everybody knows exactly what's wrong, then they can all get together and solve issues. Usually, infighting occurs. Teams fight, people butt heads. And I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it boils down to miscommunication. Somehow, somebody didn't communicate to the right person, or they didn't hit reply all, and things happen. Or it's done with people writing text and not using emoticons, and then somebody gets pissed off. Use emoticons. It helps. Secondly would be retrospectives. Retrospectives is a way to look back as to what went right, what went wrong. If you always look for ways to improve, you will always improve. You will get better every sprint after sprint. Transparency. The more that your entire team sees of the entire development process, the better off you will be. Everybody can make quicker decisions. The roadmap, which is basically an outline and a prioritized outline of your minimum viable product, or your Lean framework, whichever you want to call it. It's basically a check to-do list. This basically gleans focus into a singular method of building software. Without it, people get lost. It's just like herding cats. They go off and they get distracted. And then they start losing focus and then they start crying. Sprint 0 is probably the #1 sprint you will ever do, and it is also the most boring sprint you will ever do, but it's the most important. So those are the 5 keys that I'm going to cover within the talk here today. At the end, I would like to take questions about how you're developing in Agile, and questions about problem solving or getting teams together, anything that I missed. And I try to keep this, I give this talk quite a bit every semester. I talk to new students and I have to reiterate what Agile is and all that stuff. I figured I'd focus on this talk on actual, the main things that I see wrong with teams that are trying to implement Agile, because many of you are trying to implement it or want to, and I'll tell you that these are the main roadblocks and how to fix them. Communication consists of your entire information pipeline, how you guys are talking about delivering software, what sort of features you want to build into the game. It entails the overall development of the product. So the more that you guys can install tools in a singular tool rather than 20 different tools. At one point I had IRC chat, I had Campfire, I had voice over internet protocol with Ventrilo, then I had Skype, and then we had UMA, which is webinar software for desktop sharing. All these different tools. The less tools you have that do one thing that the entire team needs, the better off you are. So in that, there are different meeting types, which are levels of ceremony. How much you guys actually implement to get communication flowing through the company. So of those types, the meeting types are the Scrum of Scrums. That's where all your leads get together and talk about what's going on with each of the teams, the feature teams, the meta teams, to discuss any impediments that are going on. Also with the business side, you're able to make decisions from a higher level. So the Scrum of Scrums is the leads meetings. The meta teams are like skills teams. So all of your artists are together, all of your designers are together, all of your programmers are together, and they meet at least once or twice a week outside of your normal meetings. The meta teams are good for actually looking at work and solving problems, and looking at work to make sure that it adheres to the technical requirements that the team wanted in the first place. So as it's moving through the pipeline, you can start looking at errors or flaws with the product or the asset as it's moving. And the meta team can make decisions. They can either pass it or send it back to the person and say you need to rework it. You can also, with tech team, they can look at each other's code, make sure that it's running efficiently, make sure that it's adhering to technical requirements. And then the feature teams. Feature teams are your diverse teams. I would say that the #1 problem with most teams starting out with Agile is that they tend to get into a hybrid, waterfall, Agile hybrid, where they start moving things down the assembly line. So they draw the character, or the designer designs the character, then he hands it off to the artist who draws the character, and then they hand it off to the modeler who models the character. They tend to do that. I would say the more that you get into feature teams, which are diverse teams, so if you're building out characters, you would want a designer, an artist, and a programmer and an animator all working to build out the main characters where they actually design it. The artist actually speed paints, so you can make decisions right away, take pieces out, add pieces in. The modeler can actually get the base T-pose on it and start modeling in real time. And then once they get the mesh done, they can start rigging it, and the team's working together to develop the character and iterate on the character. So, and that's just one of the examples. The more that you have a diverse team working on a feature, the more agile you are. Make sure that every day you guys run out daily stand-ups, or at least every other day if you guys are working in cloud-based teams or you're not doing this full-time, you're doing it on the side. That way, everybody knows exactly what you're working on, and if you can show what you're working on, even better. And that way people can look at whatever mistakes you're making and say, oh, you need to change that, that's not the requirements, because if you get all the way to the end of the road and that thing is not working, you've wasted all that work. And wasted work pisses off people quite a bit. So that's why we iterate. That's why we look at stuff. That's why we give critical feedback as it's being developed. Otherwise, you lose all that time. And transparency. The more that we can see everybody working on the product, the more that we can actually make decisions on the fly. And making those decisions, especially in a cloud environment, speed is essential. Tools for this, I recommend, Google Hangouts. We just brought everybody into Google Hangouts and we created our own private dev pages for whatever projects we have working on. And then those teams can actually post their work in there, and you can create sections in Google Hangouts and Google Plus page. And you can bring people into a meeting, you can schedule a meeting, then those people show up to the meeting, and you can see each other's desktops. You can actually do peer programming, pair programming. You can take desktop control, so I can look at people building models. I can look at people working inside the engine. It's a great tool, and I recommend you guys use it. Anytime you have a meeting, any one of these meetings that are happening throughout the week, make sure that somebody's taking notes, and then those notes go out to the team. So through Google Plus, it needs to be just a simple text file. Here's the meeting notes, take a look at it, and everybody that takes a look at it, they just +1 it, and they can make decisions, or they can see what decisions were made throughout the week for those meetings. And whatever videos or images. There's a lot of video tools for programmers to take and, hey, I programmed this AI, and take a look at it, tell me what you think, and you can see what's working, what's not working. So anybody can take what they're working and put it out for everybody to see. The more that people see, the better the morale is, that you can actually see a physically working game. The less that people see, the more quiet it is. Everybody thinks that they're off goofing around playing video games all day. So the more that you see production, and that production is just pumping, the more morale goes up. The second part is retrospectives, and over the years I've found that retrospectives, I've moved up the list to number 2, Agile Manifesto and those guys. They put something else in the number 2 slot, but I forgot what it was. I believe that if you're working at Agile and you're constantly looking at ways to improve your teams, your processes, the better you will get, and you should always look to improve. There's always something that you aren't doing well. There's always something that your team can focus on and work to improve during the process of you delivering successful software. Always be looking back at what you did and work with your team to basically say, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong? You should also celebrate your successes. You guys are doing things one thing well. Okay, that's great, let's keep that up. How do we get that to the other teams? How do we keep that going? And track all this stuff too. You should have I recommend some sort of project site, Google Sites. You can create a project site that houses all of your notes from each sprint and what you guys decided on, what you're going to work on, and how you guys were going to tackle problems. What you're doing wrong, develop a list of things that you want to improve on, prioritize that list, and then come up with a plan as a team to implement tools, processes, in order to improve what you're doing wrong. What can we use that can be better? How do we force people to do this stuff? There have been times where I've literally had to hold the entire team's hands to go through the process, and I have to do it every meeting after every meeting, and then human beings then start to get in a rhythm, and then they can go themselves. But implementing new things is a pain. Human beings don't really cling on to stuff quite as easily, and then once you get it in place, then it's really hard to get them to change. But that's the beauty of Agile. Change is at the forefront, always changing, looking at what's going on in front of you, a few feet out in front of you, making decisions that make you miss or get around obstacles. As I said, the transparency model, it builds morale. That way everybody should be playing to build and having fun with the game, getting other people to play the game, everybody seeing everything that's going into the game, every asset, look at functionality, posting videos. It also helps teams to make decisions on the fly. Agile is about having teams that are self-managing. It also helps people that are running the business to be down in the trenches and not have to worry about having to guide everybody. Teams can be engaged, they can see different errors, they can look at processes in order to improve the teams. They have the power to be able to move things rather than just the CEO saying this is the way it needs to be, this is the way it needs to go. Bottom-up driven development is really well done when you have more transparency involved. And it's getting, I like, when I have teams developing, I usually make them put the build on the wall. I get a projector and I force them to put it up on the big screen. And then they have to look at it as it's being built. And the more that you look at it, the more you can see the stages in which it's being developed, what state it currently is in. Everybody will say, well, you know, I got this working and I handed it off, and then you come to find out it never got into the build, it wasn't working, or, you know, vice versa. This is an accurate depiction of where you're at with the state of the game. And it should always be front and center. This is kind of an epiphany that we've had throughout, I would say, the last year or so. And it's when the bigger your teams are, the more you lose focus as to what exactly we're building. And teams tend to get really frustrated when we move in certain directions and you don't have something on the wall or a document that states exactly where we're at and where this product needs to go. So the roadmap I found is the singular most piece of important paper or document you have in the entire company. The reason being is that at any moment anybody can be in the cloud working remotely, and they can go in and they can actually see the task that you need to build in some sort of project management tool. They can see the prioritized movement of the product. That way they know exactly what's been done, and don't remove stuff from the roadmap, actually check them off as you're going down the list, because that builds morale as well. So they tend to get lost without direction, and it really defines what it is your product, your minimum viable product is, and what still needs to be built for it. It also shows the interconnectivity of certain pieces or features that all need to work together in order to make one feature really fun or enjoyable in the game. Also, it helps you to define how you're selling the game and the monetization model. You know, it's one thing to come up with a great idea, it's another one to get it to the marketplace. And then you have to design something that actually is going to sell, because there's all these different monetization models out there. You know, and identifying which one it is plays really heavily into your design of the game. Then that way you can design stuff that's going to help your company make money and the product make money as well. Build out your lean framework within the roadmap. So figure out what the fun is. You know, to identify the key components of your game that are going to be fun, that need to be in there, and build that first. Build it and play it, and then have other people play it. And then that's do you find it fun? If people are enjoying playing your game, and that's your lean framework of fun. Then now you can add a monetization model to that, build it out to MVP, and then you can get it out the door and hopefully make some revenue. And it's all about keeping focus. These guys, your teams need to understand where you're going and where you're at. And dreaded Sprint Zero. We've lost many lives to Sprint Zero from sheer boredom and headache. Getting people together in order to define the requirements of the entire game, and identifying what the chipset is, what the platform you're releasing to is, then figuring out the marketplace you're taking it to, and then having to come up with a set of standards for everybody to follow. Then that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of testing, a lot of spikes and chores. Basically a spike is, I have an idea, but I don't even know how to implement it. Well, you need to do the research. So then you do the research, and then that leads into the chore where you actually apply said research to see if it validates your assumptions. Then once it does, then you say, okay, that's how we're going to do it. This looks great. Benchmarking, removing the doubt. Multiplayer games, if you're going to have 15,000 polys in a multiplayer game and you're running on a Tegra 3 chip, it's never going to work. So you have to get the teams to understand what it is they're building for, and you make them do the research and then come to you with the requirements that they want, or that they specify. But it's also another thing is adhering to those requirements. It's when you get an asset from somebody and it doesn't follow the technical requirements, you need to hand it back and say, this doesn't follow technical requirements. This sucks, you need to redo it. Because the more that you allow into the build that doesn't follow tech recs, the more that you build up technical debt. And then that technical debt leads to you never releasing a game, which we don't want. You want to test out your entire pipeline from design, from inception to putting it into the game, putting it into the build, testing it, and then putting it to market as quickly as possible. Try out your animation system. Bring in your animation, bring in your rigged characters, see if the animation works. Animations inherently are the #1 thing that teams just don't get or don't do right out the box. It has a steeper learning curve. Then once you push it all the way to market, you know that we know how to build assets to requirements to get it to the marketplace, to get it in a player's hands, to get them playing it and purchasing the item. The sooner that you can establish that pipeline, the sooner you start removing all the doubt for the entire project. That speeds up delivery. Then you can just start ramping up. Everybody knows we've gotten rid of the doubt. We now know how this game is going to function. We know how assets are going to flow and how the customer is actually going to purchase the item and actually play it and have fun. So the more that you can push assets through the pipeline, the better your product will be. But I can't stress enough that Sprint Zero is the most important. You have to do as quickly gathering all of this knowledge and testing this knowledge prior to your first sprint. The better that you do this, the better that your product will be, the less hiccups you'll run into. The less that you do on this, the more problems you'll have, and more technical debt you will ramp up. And then technical debt you won't be able to release on time or on budget. So then, basically, all of you guys have to come together. And all of you have, and I stress this with my students as well, is the important thing about Agile is that you all are a very important piece of the entire cog of the machine. And you have to act as one unit, one desktop, one tool, one requirement, one way to make the asset, one aspect ratio. Make sure that everybody's working on the same page, otherwise you will lose to your arch nemesis. You will not win. The more you work together, the more symbiotic you are, the better your product will be, the quicker you'll be able to deliver quality software. There are certain tips that I find, or that I found through failing on my own companies that I would like to share with you as well. And these are some key ones that I think every team should adhere to. And if you don't have these, then you should start looking for them before you get too far in and you can't deliver a product on time to make a milestone. I found that Agile requires you to vote on your Scrum lead. And I say, bullshit. The CEO should decide who a core quality leader is. Most teams will nominate whoever they think is really cool. Hey, Jim's a great guy, but he's never led a team out of a wet paper bag before, and he's never delivered anything on time. So most teams will nominate some person that they like rather than somebody who they think is a great leader that will make sure that everybody stays on task and delivers. Leadership and your team of leaders all need to be working together, and they need to be collaborating. It doesn't need to be one person in a silo just building out their team, working with their feature team, building out their features and divvying up tasks and all that kind of stuff. It should be teams that are diverse leadership that is working together to solve problems and making sure that everybody's being held accountable. I saw a great presentation, and this line really affected me. Be bothered by the suck. And we don't have enough people that stand up and say, this sucks. What we're doing right now, what we're building sucks. We could be doing better. Most people will stand in the back and they'll just let things go along, and they'll pretend that somebody else is going to stand up and say something rather than say something themselves. But when it comes to especially indie startups and people branching out on their own or trying Agile for the first time, you have to identify as a team what's wrong inherently with the process that you're building your software. Because if you don't say anything, it will continue to drag down everything that's being built, morale will drop, you won't be as efficient as you can be, and it takes everybody on the team to stand up and say that something's wrong. All of the stuff that you do in order to improve your processes and come to the table and say, if something sucks, how would you fix it? At the end of the day, it makes everybody's lives easier because you don't have to worry about broken pipelines, you don't have to worry about the business failing, you don't have to worry about Jim never showing up to meetings. Everybody should call everything out that sucks and look for a way to improve it. Make sure that your team understands the hierarchy or the pecking order. Everybody can bring ideas and collaborate, and that's awesome. But designers will argue over and over, and I mean brutal arguments. And somebody in the room has to be the trigger person that everybody agrees upon to say, that's it, we're done talking. It's enough designing, we need to implement. We can design all day for 2 years and implement it into the build, and all of a sudden, oh God, this game is shit. We wasted all that time, So the sooner that you guys get to, you have a person that can actually understand that we've talked enough and now's the time to test on the one that they think is the best one. And usually that's the product owner, and the product owner will act as the lead designer in most roles that we give them. And that's your internal customer, basically, so to speak.